On today's show, we have a trade to break down. The Ottawa Senators have acquired Linus Ullmark from the Boston Bruins.
We'll talk about what it cost the Sens to acquire the reigning Vezina Trophy winner. Will an extension be in place soon? And is he the right fit long term?
We also heard from Sens GM Steve Staios this morning on TSN 1200. We'll give our thoughts on that and more. This is Locked On Sens.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Playoffs may be over, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone all day, all summer long. I'm talking baseball, Olympics. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube, where a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. The road to 8,000 is skyrocketing thanks to our mock draft. If you missed the 6-hour masterpiece, go check that out exclusively on YouTube. Today is Tuesday, June 25th, and Pilsy, a reigning Vezina Trophy winner, is coming to Ottawa.
Ross, I can't even believe this is real life right now. And I know there's been smoke around the Ullmark acquisition for days, but I kind of had already accepted he was coming to Ottawa. It was just, all right, what's that looming price going to be? And I thought it was going to be a lot more than this. And I thought the Ottawa Senators were going to have to do more work, whether trades, buyouts, what have you, to clean up that crease. But steady Stevie Staios got it all done in one swift motion.
If you have been under a rock, or maybe you passed out, had a longer than usual sleep, it was 15 minutes before the puck dropped in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, and Steve Staios pulled the trigger, acquiring Linus Ullmark, who has 1 year remaining on his contract, which we will get to, in exchange for Joonas Korpisalo, albeit with 25% retained, which means the Senators will hold on to $1 million against the cap over the next 4 seasons. They also parted with Mark Kastelic and the first-round pick that the Sens acquired in the Alex DeBrincat trade, which actually was Boston's. They sent it to Detroit for Tyler Bertuzzi. So the pick ends up right back to its rightful owner. Kind of a funny aside there. But that's it, Pilsy. I know you were going to ask me what else, but that's it.
The key here, Ross, is, and look, Joonas Korpisalo, great mask, arguably the best mask in Sens history, one of them. It was great. Don't even give me that. But
it was like also, the Titanic. It looked great till it hit the ice.
Yeah, fair. That's a good one. And sank the team to the bottom of the Atlantic.
How many shots did it take the iceberg to get past the Titanic? Because it was 1 or 2 for Corpy.
Right off the bat as well. Didn't work out here, clearly. And
yeah, all due respect. All due respect.
That's where I'm getting at. It just, all due respect, things didn't work out. You signed a 5-year deal. You don't expect to be traded after one of them. But it was just clear that it wasn't going to work out with Corpy here. I don't think management really had their full support behind him, as they weren't the ones that gave him that big deal. And they needed to find a different solution. And Steve Staios said it. I think it was clear they weren't trying to find a, lateral move. They needed to increase and improve their goaltending. And they went big game hunting. They were reportedly in on Markstrom, but they've been dialed in, and they've probably been the most aggressive team trying to acquire Linus Ullmark since the trade deadline. And that's where, Ross, when almost nothing happened at the trade deadline other than trading Vladimir Tarasenko for 2/3. We'll get into that as well, 2/3, and signing Boris Katchouk, legend, Everyone, Sens fans were kind of like, okay, Steve Staios, that's so disappointing. And then he comes out with the line, we had a lot of conversations that are going to build on bigger deals in the offseason. Everyone's like, well, what does that mean? Is that even anything? But it sounded sincere, and it sounded like he really meant it, Ross. And now you can start to see the fruits of his labor there, because they talked about moving Korpisalo to Boston at the deadline, and Boston just they weren't interested at that time. They didn't feel like it was the right move for them. And honestly, Ross, in my opinion, I thought Boston was just like, we don't want Korpisalo now, later, or at all. Like, I didn't think he was going to be a part of this trade in any way, shape, or form. So for Steve Staios to get out of the issue of Korpisalo, because I believe everyone kind of is in the same boat that they were going to have to solve the problem that was Korpisalo, to improve that position to Ullmark, a Vezina winning trophy winner,
reigning,
and you have 2 first-round picks. You give the latter one away, and you also move on from a guy in Kastelic that probably didn't have a role here. And if Daniel Alfredsson sees him do a flyby one more time, he's going to lose his absolute mind. So really, you kind of get rid of a couple of problems while bringing home an ultimate solution. Like this was just, it's exactly what the Sens needed. And now they have so much more room and ability to make improvements throughout. And it's a beautiful thing. Sens fans, I know we get into this. We have one big trade every year off season, then the deadline, now off season again, and we get too hyped. But we'll get into this, Ross. I'll snap it back to you. But this one is different for sure.
This one feels different from the standpoint, and we're going to milk this reigning Vezina Trophy winner for the next 48 hours, because on Thursday night, Connor Hellebuck will be named the Vezina Trophy winner. But until then, it's Linus Ullmark. So to pick up on that, though, Pilsy, this isn't like when the Sens got Matt Murray and we're like, hey, remember when he won 2 Stanley Cups? There were a couple of really bad seasons after that for Matt Murray. That was a reclamation project. Korpisalo, we were like, oh my God, there's this sample size of 1 year. He was really good last year.
Not even 1 year, like 15 games with the LA Kings.
He was okay in Columbus even for a bad team. But compared to his career, it was a very good year. We're like, can he build on that? This is the longest track record of consistency that we've seen. Not only the highs of a .938 save percentage during the Vezina winning season, but Linus Ullmark has provided stability going back to his time with the Buffalo Sabres, who frankly were not a good defensive team. Watching his highlight reel, he's got a lot of flash, some great glove saves. You might remember the one on Dylan Gambrell, not this year, last year, a huge glove save that was front and center in that highlight pack. Brady just destroys Hampus Lindholm behind the net, sends it out front, and Linus Ullmark was like coming out to challenge as he went into the splits, as he windmilled. It was an unreal save for Ullmark, but also it's how compact he is in his net. He's a big guy, not enormous, but he's a big guy that covers a ton of ground. He's 6'4", but he's more of like that Freddie Anderson type where he just lets the puck hit him. He knows that he's confident in being a blocker more than Korpi is like the furthest end of the scale reactionary goalie. It's like, how am I going to be as athletic as I can? And when it works, it looks sick. But to give your team confidence, less is more. Less movements in the crease, less hectic play around the crease. He's so calm, cool, and collected that I think that personality is going to translate to what we see in front of him. Now, we'll get to what Steve Staios said, what's to come. The defense that you knew it is not coming back. That is for certain. No. So people are saying, well, you put Ullmark in Ottawa, he's going to be bad. The team stinks. We don't know what the team's going to look like, but I can tell you one thing. This guy exudes confidence when he plays, and I think he's going to be a great fit for the Ottawa Senators.
And Ross, it's just about having that added layer of confidence. And I think that's the lack of confidence in the goaltending last season. Sure, there's a lot of other issues you can point to, but it was the number one issue that derailed winnable games. When you're letting in a goal on the first 2 shots over 20 times, your team just slumps and it's like, okay, well, here we go again. When you have a goalie of Ullmark status, reigning Vezina winner, Ross, I'm hearing, it just gives you so much more confidence to play your game at a higher level. And you're going to have those opportunities where you're not down 1 goal right away off a muffin from the blue line that slips through. You're going to have so much more ability to play your style of game without feeling the need to collapse towards the net, to block everything that's going towards the net. And I just think, and this is why this trade is different than the DeBrincat one, than the Chychrun one. DeBrincat, you were bringing in a sniper that was kind of a luxury. Like it didn't
two-time 40 goal scorer, I heard.
Yeah, that's what we loved about it. But like, it didn't fully make sense, especially without the extension. But it was like, hey, this guy's going to be a big boost. We love this. And then obviously that doesn't work out. You bring in Jacob Chychrun at the deadline. You're like, okay, sure. We have 3 high-profile left shot defensemen, but Chychrun can play the right side. He's going to make it work. He's a good two-way guy. Check the plus minus on that one. Not exactly the best two-way guy. So that didn't work either. Whereas bringing in a veteran goalie, 30 years old, a Vezina winning goalie, and having his role be very clearly defined. Like there's no, we're going to be a tandem. Someone's going to be fighting for your job in training camp. There's none of that. Linus Ullmark is going to come to Ottawa in a contract year, and he's going to be a bona fide number one starting goalie. He's probably going to start the most games in his career. He's never started more than 50. Probably going to have that eclipse that mark in this season. And he can have this feeling of, okay, this is my net. And I think that's going to be such a big difference for him and the Ottawa Senators to have a guy that has the confidence and wants that pressure.
30 years old, will be 31 on July 31st. He's going into the final year of a contract that is paying him a total of $5 million. But of note, there's a $1 million signing bonus on July 1st. That's something that typically the Sens were trying to look to get rid of, like when they added a second-round pick to Derek Brassard or to Mika Zibanejad to get Derek Brassard. Now it's like, oh, you don't want to pay that bonus? So, send him over here. We'll do just that. So a new regime is certainly here for the Ottawa Senators and a new starting goalie. Welcome to Ottawa, Linus Ullmark, who from the sounds of it, had a conversation with Daniel Alfredsson that ultimately decided for him to waive his no-move clause. Some other notes from this trade. You know that he and Anton Forsberg were once a goalie tandem together in Modo in Sweden? It's so funny because last year it was all about how Joonas Korpisalo and Anton Forsberg won a Calder Cup together in Cleveland. So how it started, how it's going. My question to you after the break, Pilsy, is this the tandem for next season? Will Anton Forsberg be back? And we'll get into a bit of the return. I'm sure some Boston Bruins fans are wondering our thoughts on Mark Kastelic. And is Joonas Korpisalo going to be an NHL goalie next year? Like, can he bounce back from what we saw last season? Those questions and what's next for the Ottawa Senators. You're listening to Locked On Sens, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs are over, the Stanley Cup has been awarded. Congrats to the Florida Panthers. We get fewer or even no games at all, and the sports just aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I got to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. Ross, I put a bunch of wagers on Game 7 last night. And ironically, I only won one of those bets. I was Connor McDavid heavy. I thought he was going to have a legacy game. That didn't happen. The only bet I hit, this is why I love FanDuel, they had a prop bet. Will the puck drop before or after 8:22? I said after, and I won that. That's it. all my hockey related bets I did not hit on, but that's why you got to look for the extra props, Ross. And I got one, and you can too on FanDuel. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head to fanduel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
All right, Pilsy. If everybody needs a reminder, Linus Ullmark is an Ottawa Senator.
Woo!
The Swedish goaltender is bringing a career save percentage that is pretty much better than any Senator in franchise history. Linus Ullmark, through 247 career NHL starts or games, 238 starts, has a .919 save percentage. Pilsy, if you had to guess in Ottawa Senators history with a minimum of why don't we do minimum of 238 games, same as Ullmark's played? Where does that rank in Sens history?
Okay, I got to start with some questions off the top. Are we talking about career games played or games played in Ottawa? Like what? Give me some parameters here.
It was in Ottawa, but it's not a fair thing because there's only a couple goalies, Patrick Lalime and Craig Anderson, who have even played that many games for Ottawa. So why don't we put it at 50 games?
Okay, well, Craig Anderson.
No.
Oh.
Craig Anderson had a .914 save percentage in Ottawa. That's just, I feel like people need these comparisons. Like .914, .919.
Patrick Lalime?
Nope.
No one.
There's one. And he started 48 games, actually, but played 55.
Who?
Andrew Hammond.
Oh, damn. Yep. Should have had that one. Wow.
Yeah. So if you go just overall in Sens history, their number one save percentage from more than just a game or two is Dominic Hasek, .925, Andrew Hammond, .923. And then, I mean, Ben Bishop only played 23 games. He had .917. Linus Ullmark in Ottawa Senators history with a minimum of 3 games played even. Let's go 8 because Mike Brodeur played 7. Let's go with 8. He has the third best save percentage in franchise history.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just the thing. Like bringing in a guy, like starting with a Vezina winning goalie in your crease and working out just makes everything so much easier.
Take care of the goaltending first. The most important position. Build out from there. Pilsy. Now I'm wondering what's next. But a lot of people announce this. It's almost like, hey, I want to make sure the risotto is fully cooked. I'm not trying to serve it and have the middle as crunchy. You want it to be just perfect right throughout. And I think Steve Staios is showing that he is competent. And as he told TSN 1200 this morning, it's all about building the team around him from a managerial side, adding Rob DeMaio as the director of player movement? No.
I don't know his exact title, to be honest.
Damn. I really want to find that out. But he also credited guys like the coaching staff, like Travis Green coming in and just feeling confident about everybody that is around him. The director of player personnel, that is what I was looking for Rob DeMaio. But just these fresh perspectives that the Senators just hadn't had in the past. So, look, here's what I'll say about Linus Ullmark, and then let's get into the return a little bit more.
Yep.
If he sucks in Ottawa, that's a Sens problem, not an Ullmark problem. The sample size is too long.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Sens fans are already yelling at their steering wheel saying Boston Bruins defense and the whole team is so much better, blah, blah. Look at the Buffalo stats. Like that. That's all we need to do. And it's been consistent throughout. And I feel like, Ross, we're in an era where goalies don't really hit their full stride till their 30s, it kind of seems like, right? Like
the Senators acquired Craig Anderson around this same time.
Nice. I love that. So I'm fully confident. Like when they signed Joonas Korpisalo to that deal, look, we do a Sens pod. We're a #goalie friendly show. I didn't want to just dump all over it. So I used words like cautiously optimistic. They got a goalie they feel confident in. And I tiptoed around it. But really, in my mind, I was like, I think this might be a disaster. And unfortunately, that's how it played out. It's not often I'm right. But this one, I don't have those reservations at all. I have full utmost belief and confidence in Linus Ullmark.
That's what I got from a source, let's call it, right when the Sens made the signing. My condolences on Sens signing Korpisalo.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It felt like a last-ditch effort by Pierre Dorion being like, all right, I got the team a goalie. They gotta keep me around to see if this goalie works out, maybe. I don't know. But like, this is so different. And I know there's a lot of Sens fans that are nervous with no extension. But Ross, correct me if I'm wrong, there wasn't even a possibility for an extension until July 1st, right? So
correct. Now
from either Boston or Ottawa.
Correct. There does seem like there's some gray area now around that, but I almost think, look, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, Pillsy.
Yeah, and the thing is, and this is the perfect transition to the cost, Ross. So I'll segue us here.
Let me
hop
back
segue.
off the segue, reverse.
I don't get to drive the bus.
No, I just want to get this one point across because some people are like, oh no, he's a UFA, he can just walk. Well, that has been the case with Alex DeBrincat and Jacob Chychrun.
DeBrincat was an RFA.
Right, but still,
and we thought we were warm and cozy in that RFA spot. Nope.
Yeah, well, the problem is you're damned if you don't, too, because they've taken swings signing long-term contracts with Matt Murray and Joonas Korpisalo, and guess what? Neither of them finished their contracts in Ottawa, and I don't know if you had to pay to get rid of Korpisalo. I guess you are literally paying $1 million a year.
Yes. You do.
To get rid of him. Hey, it beats 8 years. And which would have been the buyout.
3 for 8. Yeah.
And now I'm curious is Boston going to buy out Corpy? Probably not, but it'd be crazy if they did. It would cost the Senators $50,000 against the cap this year.
And all 8 years. Like that's where we saw like the Coyotes are going to pay that full retained salary for Oliver Ekman-Larsson when Vancouver bought them out. So it would have a long-lasting effect, but at a much smaller rate. So here's where I'll transition to the turn, Ross. Honestly, if acquiring Ullmark as a rental for 1 year is the prize for getting rid of the Korpisalo contract, that's already a win. Right? Like, I feel like that's not crazy to say. Like, having a rental of Ullmark to dump off Korpisalo's contract and only pay $1 million for 4 years rather than the buyout, which would have been 8 years at approximately $1.3 million, is just such a no-brainer. And
would you have been okay with this trade if Korpisalo wasn't in it? If it was a first Kastelic for Ullmark? Because I think I would have been.
I still would have been okay with that. And then that would have been very comparable to the Jacob Markstrom return, right? So, yeah, it's just, this was the right move. Like, I can't even find words to say, Ross, because we're always on the other side of this. Like, the other fan base is laughing at us. And look, the Boston Bruins, they had to figure something out. They couldn't keep Ullmark. Swayman's their guy, so they had to do this, but my God, if I was a Bruins fan, I would be upset trading a reigning Vezina for a goalie that the Sens were literally trying to get rid of, a fourth line player, and your own first round draft pick that's 25th overall. Like, this is a slam dunk trade for the Sens any way you look at it.
More on the trade, and Steve Staios is in Vegas getting ready for the draft. We are 48 hours away from our flights to Vegas. Follow along on Twitter at Sens Central for all sorts of content throughout the weekend, and make sure to subscribe on YouTube. Mark Kastelic, we'll have a little piece on him coming up, and the Senators have taken care of another RFA. Those conversations are next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by the GLEBE Central Pub. Located right in the heart of the GLEBE Central Pub is your neighborhood pub that has great food, awesome drinks, and what I love most about the GLEBE Central Pub is all the great events at the GLEBE Central Pub. I'm talking about movie night every Tuesday and Sunday nights, and they are a soccer bar. The soccer hooligans are out in Ottawa. So if you're heading down to check out Atletico Ottawa or just up for Euro or Copa America, there's all sorts of great events going on. And the GLEBE Central Pub is right at the forefront of being there for the people, by the people, because the vibes are free at the GCP. We've got a darts tournament. The first one went so well. We've got another one on Canada Day at 2 p.m. So go check that out. There are all sorts of specials. Taco Thursday, and I love wings. So every Monday, wing night, 75 cents per wing, and trivia night. Trivia is served every Tuesday. So go check out trivia tonight at the Glebe Central Pub. Trivia starts at 6:30. Call for reservations at the Glebe Central Pub. They will be showing the draft with sound this Friday. It will be our official draft headquarters this Friday, the Glebe Central Pub. So visit them in the heart of the Glebe at 779 Bank Street and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. It's the GCP, where the vibes are free. All right, Philzy. I want to let the music ride. Wow. What a trade for Steve Staios, kicking off the Steve Staios era officially. And I hope steady Stevie Staios is getting a call from Vladimir Tarasenko today. A little thank you for getting him to South Florida, where the Florida Panthers are Stanley Cup champions. Matthew Tkachuk's a winner. And what a moment with Brady Tkachuk, seeing his brother carry the Stanley Cup around the zone and just overcome with emotion, said all the right things. And you got to think that's just a burning desire that he needs to get there. Matthew said he's too good of a player not. Like this, it almost goes hand in hand with the trade, Pillsy, because like after watching that, the clock's ticking. Like Brady Tkachuk needs to be in the playoffs. There's no question about that. Next year is critically important. They couldn't take another reclamation project. They couldn't take another guy who had a small sample size being a good goalie. This is the guy. I would have been happy with Markstrom as well, but we've been asking for Ullmark all season. We've been asking for Markstrom, somebody to steady things out in the crease. And if you don't know much about Linus Ullmark, go watch the feature that Sportsnet did on him this year with Christine Simpson. I believe it was at the start of the season. Like this guy is salt of the earth, great guy. We know Swedes and Ottawa have a long-standing history, but it just feels like they nailed it with the player, the type that Linus Ullmark is. But as much, I think they're bringing in a great person to kind of be a steadying presence in the locker room as one of the veterans on this team. This is, I know we separate the goalies, but Pillsy, this is almost one of those veteran additions that the Senators said they wanted to make a calming presence and a leader in the room.
Yeah, well, how many guys over 30 do the Ottawa Senators have? Like Forsberg, 31.
Sure.
You got Hamonic, 33 for now. And then
Giroux, that's it.
Claude Giroux, that's it. So like this team needs some veteran help.
And it's in that sweet spot. We said 28 to 32. Like that's where they should be looking.
And maybe there's some Sens fans that have some concern and they're like, okay, you guys have been talking about this Vezina winning goalie, how good he's been on a good Boston Bruins team. But Ross, one thing we haven't mentioned is his numbers in the playoffs are not good.
Playoffs?
They're even, you could argue they're bad. They're worse than Korpisalo's numbers.
I just want to play in a playoff game.
But you got to get to the playoffs to complain about a goalie being bad in the playoffs. So that really doesn't bother me at all. And it's kind of been weird circumstances with the tandem in Boston as well. So that doesn't concern me enough to even have even worry about Ullmark, because the Ottawa Senators haven't made the playoffs in 7 years. We're doing episode 1075 and we've covered 0 playoff games. So I'm not worried about that.
No, we can't be. And you mentioned like for Boston's perspective, it does ease the burden when you have Jeremy Swayman, who is a stud though. And they were able to create $3 million in cap space by making this trade. But I just look at this from Ottawa's perspective as just like, this was the guy they needed. They paid the price, they got him, and they still have all sorts of assets to use. No Chychrun in this trade. They still have, if they want the 7th overall pick to trade back. It seems like Steve Staios and the Sens management might be on the same page as us, where they would be interested in trading back, but only to a certain extent. If you're behind, let's say 14, the number we keep using, let's just hold on and make sure you're charging a pretty penny. And if it's a 7 for a late first and an early second, I don't know. I probably don't make that that trade. So Staios has the cards. They're going to get a good player at 7. They still have trade chips, but right now it's about solidifying a position at a time. Are you going to move to defense or forwards? But to me, goaltending's taken care of. Look, if you can get a cheaper backup than $2.75 million, I'm sure they would explore moving Anton Forsberg. But I think in a perfect world, Forsey is only playing 22 to 25 games next year. It's going to be, I think, a traditional starter workload for Linus Ullmark next year.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Like, even if Forsberg is the guy, he's going to be a backup. He's not going to be a 1B like he was kind of looked at last season with Korpisalo. So I think that's good. And Ross, you know, maybe they even say we want to save that cap space. They move on from Forsey and they go with a Ullmark Sogard tandem to save that money. And Mads is at the point, he's played enough in Belleville. He got the playoff time. You got to see if he's ready for the NHL now, in my opinion, or at least sometime this year in a proper setup, not because there's an injury and he randomly has to play 20 games that he's not prepared for. So that could be a route that the Ottawa Senators go as well. But the number one goalie is here. And it's a damn good one.
And one of the other pieces to acquire Linus Ullmark was Mark Kastelic. And Casty, I mean, he played 144 games with the Ottawa Senators. I'll always remember being in attendance with you for one of the coolest moments in hockey. It's the first and only time it's ever happened that a player has scored his first NHL goal and gotten into a fight on the same play. And it was against Carey Price, I believe, which makes it even cooler.
Bruins fans just eat that up. And look,
that is such a Bruins, like,
right?
That's what they got to be putting on repeat. And like, he looks like a Bruin. He just, if Cam Neely, who's in the Bruins organization, can sit Casty down and be like, you need to be meaner.
You got to be mean. Yeah.
If he's mean, he's going to be a talent. We loved him as a fourth line center in theory as a potential guy, but he's great in faceoffs and the Bruins struggled. Like that's going to be a
where
place.
You have to hammer home is the face-offs with Casty. Yep.
Good penalty killer. Seems like a great guy. He's been a guest on this show, Pillsy, when he was in Belleville. But
and he's an athlete too. Whew.
He just wasn't mean enough
to
be a fourth line guy. So, hey, I think a fresh start's going to do him well. Fifth round pick, only had 5 goals, 10 points this past season. But that's a sneaky part of the trade for the Bruins in terms of getting at least an NHL player. But I saw a lot of Bruins fans were like, dude, we have 8 bottom 6 forwards. Like, how many do we need?
Yeah, and that's fair. Now, to go to Korpisalo, there's some Sens fans that are like, oh, man, we've seen this play before. Sens move on dramatically from a goalie. He goes somewhere else, and he ends up being really good. Cool. I don't care, honestly. Like, it wasn't going to work out in Ottawa. Boston's a better team, just by happenstance. He's probably going to have better. You can't have much worse numbers than he had here. So the bar is very low for him to be a better goalie. And if he works out for Boston, that's fine by me. Like this whole trading goalies and division stuff, I don't care for it. Doesn't bother me.
No. And now the Ottawa Senators have their starting goalie. What's next? Steve Staios was on TSN 1200 today, and Pillsy, he said absolutely nothing.
Yeah, pretty much nothing. The only thing, Ross, that I'll latch onto is he made it clear, like, he's not kicking his feet up and hanging out at the draft. They're still working. I mean, he's up early in the morning in Vegas. So he said he's going to continue to build in areas that they feel like the team needs improving on. So steady Stevie Staios is cooking up some more meals. Let's just say that.
Tough 12 hours for the sleepy Stevie Staios crowd. Guys making trades 15 minutes before the Stanley Cup Final, and then he's up at 6:40 a.m. with the boys over at TSN 1200. Pillsy, do you think my tin hat theory is correct? And I actually want to give a shout out on Twitter because it was initially pointed out to us last night, and it was by Matty G at Gratz _ a little FU to Bettman for taking our first round pick, for making an example out of Shane Pinto. The Senators dealt with a lot from the league last year, and they upstood the biggest game this decade, Game 7 of the Cup Final.
Yeah, easily. Yeah. And Ross, the conversations were this might have been the biggest hockey game ever. So, like, when you put it into that perspective, I don't think Steve Staios was waiting on this and was like, oh, When's the face-off? When is it, before or after 8:22? Let's drop the news right now. I don't think that's exactly what he was doing, but I also think there's a little part of him where he's like, I know the NHL doesn't like big announcements overshadowing their playoffs, but
be a real shame.
I'm going to call this one in anyways.
Love it. Good work, Steve Staios, to start. Let's see what he has next up his sleeve. Oh, wait, we've got a signing, Pillsy. Wyatt Bongiovanni has signed a 1-year, 2-way contract. He's going to make $92,500 in the AHL, the league minimum NHL deal. Bongiovanni had 8 goals in 14 regular season games after coming over from the Manitoba Moose. He and Stephen Halliday were definitely getting some good chemistry going, the two of them. So welcome back to Wyatt Bongiovanni. You got to get the hands in there too, and he's got great hands out on the ice, and he likes doing that after he scores goals. So great to see them take care of another RFA. It is the busiest 2 weeks of the season, and we'll have you covered every step of the way. Pillsy, any final thoughts on today's show?
Yes, my final thought is the biggest winner last night was Steve Staios again. I know I've been banging this drum all year, Ross, but we wanted the Florida Panthers to win, or at least I did. That 2024 4th-round pick now upgrades to a 3rd-round pick in 2026. So still underwhelming trade for Tarasenko, obviously, but 2/3 looks a lot nicer than a 3rd and a 4th.
So that means the Senators will actually have 1 less pick in this upcoming draft. And well, now 2, because they've traded Boston's first. So now Ottawa has 1 first, 1 second, and 3 4th-round picks. They have a 4th from the DeBrincat trade, and they also have a 4th from the Nick Paul trade is still going to be paid out there, 4th-round pick to the Ottawa Senators. Final thought from me, Pillsy, really cool moment. Say what you want about it, but I think it's really cool that it was Matthew Tkachuk that handed the cup to Vladimir Tarasenko. Like, we heard Brady gush over growing up in St. Louis while Tarasenko was the top of his game. And for Matthew to get that experience, obviously we wish it was Brady, but that's super cool. And look, Tarasenko was nothing but a consummate professional when he came to Ottawa. Did a lot of great work with Chio, did a lot of great work in the locker room.
Back.
Hey, UFA, crazy things have happened, but he owes Steve Staios a call for sure. At least a thank you card for winning a Stanley Cup. So congratulations to #SensAbroad, Vladimir Tarasenko, a Stanley Cup champion. And now the offseason can officially begin. For more from us, go check us out on Twitter @Sens Central. Plenty of content over on YouTube. I always would implore people to go check out our episodes of The Goalie Search before it happened. You can get our thoughts on Ullmark before he was officially a member of the Ottawa Senators. For today, we say goodbye, unless news breaks. We'll see you later. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.